And we're back with another episode of DoubleBuffs. I am your host, Gregory Piantedosi, and joined with me today is my co-host, Cristiano Attacalite. This is an LCS Esports podcast where we bring you all things League of Legends, both professional and in solo queue. As always, how are we doing today, Cristiano?
I'm doing pretty good. Just looking at some of these games from the other week. A bit of a drab weekend, to be honest, but we're still here to lay it all out for you.
Yes, sir. Um, we're still kind of figuring out our schedule. I think we'll be bringing episodes sometime between Tuesday through Thursday once a week, so you can expect that. But this past weekend, there were some interesting things, kind of just things happened in general. One thing I was a little curious about, if what your opinion or take was on, is the Sejuani top. We've been seeing it a few different games to varying success. It kind of has a similar feel to Ornn in a way, where it's a tank you can bring into the top lane with a lot of just AoE slowing and agency. So what are your thoughts on that?
I'm not so familiar with what matchups it loses to. I would imagine stuff like Fiora, so you probably need to sort of prepare your pick ban a little bit to make sure you're not getting like heavily countered. Besides that, I think it's really synergistic with the two jungle picks that are going on right now, which is just like Wukong, Viego every single game. Teams seem to handshake. And Wukong has that auto attack reset to sort of proc the Sejuani stun. Same with Viego has his little double hit. So I think those two, along with it, make for a really powerful gank. So yeah, in situations where
Mm-hmm.
you want to sort of get something going top, I can see it working.
Yeah, with these Viego nerfs, I'm a little worried for CLG because when I'm watching their games, I feel as if Viego is by far Contract's best champion. And when he's not on that, it doesn't really fit that team style where it's hectic fighting, one person dies on each side. A champion like Viego really benefits from that style because that's how you get a soul reset. That's how you can continue mechanical, chaotic fights. Uh, Wukong also looks good. I feel like in terms of 80 carries, I'm a little confused about this Renata Glasc kalista bot lane that we've been seeing a few different times. I feel as if Zeri and Senna are just far above that in terms of games I've watched, especially on these really mechanical um, players such as Han Sama or Berserker. They look really good on the Zeri. Team Liquid's game, they had the kalista Renata Glasc, and there was, I believe, a Sejuani and Wukong, or an Ornn and Wukong played by Evil Geniuses. And it's just like, if you're not doing anything early game with a Kalista, it just gets you early dragon control. It does feel like really weak later in these team fights.
Yeah, it stumps me too because so many of these games I see are LCS 80 carries. It'll be like 10 minutes and the Calista will be like 0-1 or something, which is if you're going 0-1 on Calista, there's literally no reason to pick it. I mean, you're just asking to get outscaled, like you said. It's terrible scaling. Um, I assume the only reason we're seeing it is because it does well in scrims. You know, things are usually a lot more aggressive there, and so I'm sure Callista is like dominating or something, and that's why we're seeing it.
Mm.
But I really wish they would stop picking it on stage where you're not getting these big advantages. Yeah.
Another interesting composition we saw was the Yone Yasuo Zach Sejuani Senna bot lane composition, which actually looked pretty good. The only issue was as the game progressed against, was it against Evil Geniuses? Uh,
Yeah. Evil Geniuses and Golden Guardians.
yeah, so as the game progressed, they had a really strong mid game spike, but as the game progressed, having both Yone and Yasuo, it just seemed a little too easy to stun one of them up with like an AoE type of stun, where then you only have damage coming from one other champion that's like putting themselves in the midst of everything, getting hit by AoE shots. Senna did a lot to bring that composition together, but once the Yone Yasuo were down, the Zac Sejuani just had um, no damage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a couple things about that. I don't know how that would have gone if it was a better team than Golden Guardians. If it's sort of one of those symptoms, I think we talked about it the first week where like these lower tier teams are capable of getting advantages, kind of sticking with better teams up to like the mid game, and then their sense of macro gets them caught rotating and they fall behind. I also liked EG's picks into it. They picked Kane into triple melee. I think Golden Guardians also had Zac, which was pretty cool to see. But Zac, Yone, Yasuo, Red Kane loves if there's a bunch of melees coming in on him that he can, do his thing, knock up drain. So I thought both sides of the draft were actually really cool that game.
Yeah, that actually was a really cool draft overall.
Mm-hmm.
But you also mentioned that Golden Guardians was a lower tier team, and you weren't completely sure how like another team, maybe a better team, would fare. One thing I was kind of doing as I was watching this past week's game, I was writing like a little bit of notes on all the games, but nothing too crazy. So I decided to just kind of make a new tier list for kind of like where teams are at currently and where I continue to perceive them going forwards. So for my S tier, I put in EG, 100 Thieves, Team Liquid, Cloud9. I think they're all kind of in the same tier. Maybe EG is the S tier, but 100 Thieves, they kind of have slow starts. They beat Team Liquid this past week. I mean, given it was like a 0-kill game until really late game, and then Team Liquid had Kalista, which is kind of just doomed. But Cloud9's looking a little better. I'm a little nervous for Cloud9 when Sven's not on Yumi, but that can be another conversation. But yeah, so that's my S tier, kind of the four teams we expected. My A tier is CLG and FlyQuest. FlyQuest, I kind of wanted to be a little less optimistic and put them a little lower, probably because I think they're just a less entertaining team in terms of personalities and play style. But like realistically, they're probably as good as CLG. My B tier, I have Dignitas and Golden Guardians, and my C tier, I have TSM and Immortals. Immortals is definitely C tier. I think you could make an argument for like GG being slightly better, and then Dig and TSM are on the same um, page. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean you can't see it, so I guess it's hard for you to really analyze that. But
Yeah. Personally, I totally agree with you that I think EG right now is a tier above sort of those other S tier teams you were saying. Honestly,
like
the
a small
only
tier, right? Not like a big tier.
uh, I
What do
don't
you
know.
think?
Team Liquid has been looking like pretty shaky recently, and 100 Thieves we've been sort of criticizing for a few weeks now. I think they're like one solid grade above at the moment, at least. Maybe
Yeah.
hopefully Team Liquid will make it more competitive, but I think we've seen just sort of a level of I don't know how to put it. When you see these players playing, you're never like, oh, are they going to do like some crazy int like a lot of these other teams you see? Bwipo sometimes a little iffy. Their Team Liquid's bot lane, especially, I think, has been questionable. I wrote a few notes about them, but yeah, there's one point where Hansama is coming into a soul point fight, and he's on that wonderful Kalista, and he flashes over the jungle wall into a fight so that he can pull his support in
Yeah.
for an engage. And yeah, Core JJ like misses the ult, and then Han Sama gets collapsed on and by like Ornn, and it's like, well, really wish you had your flash there, don't you? And so there's like these troll plays coming out even by like the upper echelon that I just feel like I don't see so much from EG.
Well, one thing on EG. Okay, I guess I have 2 points on EG.
Mm-hmm.
One is they're currently 6-1, and their one loss was to CLG, which was a nail biter of a game. So they hypothetically could be undefeated. But I'm looking at their. It feels like they've had the easiest strength of schedule so far. Their first match was against Cloud9, which they won, which is a great first match. While Cloud9's kind of ramping up. Wait,
Right.
where? Let me.
That was the sub roster though, right? Of Cloud9?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, oh, 1 second. Okay, so yeah, that was their first win. Their next win was against 100 Thieves, and they've had a slow start. So two teams that have slow starts were their first two games. Then they beat FlyQuest. Then they beat Immortals. Then they beat um, Golden Guardians. I mean, it feels like they haven't had a super like it's been a nice progression for them so far.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, looking forward to next week. I think this is actually like the only good game of next week. They're going to be playing Team Liquid. So hopefully we can see them sort of prove what I just said, or else I'm going to look pretty funny if they lose exactly to Team Liquid, who I was just sort of comparing them to and flaming.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. Thinking of how that breaks down, funnily enough, like I think that bot lane is going to be the crucial decider. I feel like Impact and Bwipo are gonna probably both have like a troll death or two, getting caught, put too far, pushed up. Um, Maybe some action in the mid lane. Jojo Pune has been like his whole thing is flaming Bjergsen last split, remember? So that should be interesting. And then yeah, that bot lane. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Um, I do think Evil Genius is a slight tier above Team Liquid. I feel like I see Core JJ missing some easy skill shots. Bjergsen kind of like he seems like he's not doing much. Like last split, he was just kind of there. In this split, it feels kind of similar. Where I mean, Santorin's a good enabler early, but the only lane he seems to be able to enable is Bwipo, and then Han Sama has just been kind of quiet because he's more of that team fighter. And then if you're on, I mean, Han Sama looked a lot better on Zeri than he did Kalista. To be fair, against
Mhm.
that 100 Thieves game. Um, yeah,
If there's one thing I do like, I like Bjergsen picking up that Swain pick. Seems to be doing them pretty well. Uh, it's just like such a nasty front line when once again like you're picking usually melee top, melee jungle, things that want to come into you. It's just such a wall. You can't walk past it. It drains so much life. So maybe we can see that make a difference. I don't know. I feel like I understated a little bit how weird it is that Hansama and Cordae are doing this poorly because when you look at it on paper, they should be absolutely destroying every single bot lane in the league. And they're not. They're dying in really weird ways. And it just I have no idea what could be happening. If it's like a behind the scenes thing or I don't know. We're not seeing like any of the Draven, Kalista. We're seeing them play, but not so well. Even though it's one of Hansama's like signature champs. Yeah, I
yeah. I
don't know.
mean, it could just be guys are getting older. I mean, that's like a topic that's discussed a lot in esports. Is like, does age really affect your play? And I feel like historically the answer has been no. We've seen Faker survive for so long with great mechanics, but I mean, maybe Core JJ Bjergsen, like it's a little too many veterans. I don't know. I mean, EG has a nice displacement of both young and old guys, where they have the veteran leadership, but also those like Gen Z ADHD mechanics. On the Swain concept, I really like these displacement kind of champions, such as like we saw Afremu play Braum to pretty good success this past weekend, like Braum, Swain, Gragas. I think when you have all of those champions paired with a high mobility ADC such as Zeri that can really take advantage of like the chaos of a team fight, I really like those types of compositions.
Right.
I'm I really hope teams stop picking the Kalista Renata Glasc. I don't understand it at all. Um, in terms of like I have those four teams in my S tier, but like my A tier I have CLG Fly, B tier Dig GG, C tier TSM Immortals. Do you kind of agree with that, or would you swap any of the teams there?
Honestly, I think TSM. I would give them a little bit more credit than not FlyQuest. I think FlyQuest has been really impressive this split. Actually, I would give them more credit than Dignitas. That's who. I think Dignitas is like pretty lost. I don't have much more to say about them. It's just kind of they played against FlyQuest this weekend. It's just like hard to watch them play against teams that aren't also bottom of the barrel. And I
Well,
think
they
TSM
they
at
they
least
beat TSM
sometimes.
though this past weekend.
Yeah, but the
They
whole
looked
thing
pretty
about
good doing it
TSM
too.
is that they're like so inconsistent, though. So I guess it depends how highly you rate consistency. Obviously, like pretty highly, but I feel like TSM has the opportunity to take games off these like some of these higher standard teams. I just don't feel like that about Dig. I guess that's what it comes down to for me.
Well, I mean, River is a great jungler. I think Games who had a good weekend, so I think he's leveling up a little bit. Blue can actually play the likes of Zoe, which is one of those champs that's more of not a North American special, but it's good that he can show it. I mean, Neo's a really good ADC, and then or maybe it's Johnson. I forget which one they have. They have Neo or Johnson. paired with Biofrost. I don't know. I just like this Dignitas roster. I think the TSM one has more potential, but yeah, I could see them being in one tier or the other tier.
Yeah, I think it's definitely very debatable. When you're talking about this sort of muddy bottom middle of the standings, a lot of the time it's like, who's better on the day? It's kind of a flip. But
Well,
yeah.
one reason also why I had Dig above TSM is because they secured Dragon Soul against FlyQuest in like a game that like FlyQuest was about to win, and then it was like a nice TP play by FlyQuest at the very end to win the game. But if they could just have gotten those recalls off, they were in a good position to win it. So if they had a 2-0 weekend over FlyQuest and TSM, I mean FlyQuest have a tier above them, so I rate that win pretty highly, and then I mean, it could just be the weekend. It is best of one, but that's another thought process I have.
Yeah. Speaking of FlyQuest, I'm actually like, I'm my heart is warmed a little bit that they're doing so well. Whenever one of those teams that isn't e.g. 100 Thieves, TL, C9, which it's been for the past few years, whenever they like show a burst of brilliance, it's always a little heartwarming. Like everyone was getting hyped for CLG, but they went 0-2 this weekend, unfortunately. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I think FlyQuest is a pretty like they have a good culture for their org. I've listened to different interviews by some of their management, like they're giving back to the communities. They're a very professional org. So I think when you have that foundation, no matter who your players are, if you're like that professional, you're gonna do good. One game I thought was interesting was Cloud9 versus CLG because um, both teams looked pretty good. CLG had that Yone top, which kind of felt a little useless in the early game against the Tryndamere. But I was excited for the pick because CLG is really trying and holding to their play style of these chaotic fights. So I mean, Yone top fits the bill. They have their own play style and theme. It's not about always following the meta and following what works in all the regions. It's about developing your own style. So I'm glad they're sticking to it. But I really think Sven on Yumi, he's really good on Yumi. He hasn't
Hmm.
looked quite as good on some other champions, but Cloud9 had Udyr, Ziri, and Yumi that game, which is just really disgusting in terms of like movement speed and what you can do with that.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about it. It was especially good that Udyr Zoe combo. I think everyone's gonna remember Blabber like running 2 towers deep and just like not taking damage. And I think a large part is because CLG picks triple AD. They have their AD carry, their jungler, and their top laner, I believe, were all AD. And then they have Zoe mid, which is like single target burst. And if you're Zoe, you're really not trying to hit Udyr. And if you do, Yumi is just healing the burst you did. So Udyr can just stack armor and be like invulnerable to the other 3 members who are actually going to be hitting him. And
Mm-hmm.
I thought that played a large part. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I remember there was one fight and Blabber just runs into the middle of like 5 CLG members and he just bear slaps 3 guys. He goes pop, 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 and just stuns them all right in a row, and they're just like helpless to hit him in any way. But
That
yeah,
I remember seeing that too. That was pretty great.
yeah.
So do you think
And
Cloud9 is kind of on the up and up?
I honestly think I'm going to give them 2 more weeks of LCS, and I think they're going to be the best team after that.
Better than Evil
Um,
Geniuses.
all right, I think they're going to be on par with Evil Geniuses because EG, like I said, has been really impressive. But I just think like each player on the roster like has such individual talent. They don't seem to be lacking in like any role except maybe like Sven not on Yumi, and also Tom Kenshi did well on, but both of those have kind of asterisks because they're both kind of like not do nothing champions, but they're.
They are.
Do you know what I'm kind of
No,
trying to
spade.
say? Yeah, they have like one purpose, and it's pretty easy to do. And then on
Yeah.
Lulu, they lost, and
Yeah.
so you got to wonder a little bit about his champ pool. But
I know
besides
what
that,
you mean. I'm trying to think of like the way to describe
yeah,
it.
yeah, I'm not sure either.
It's like
They're
you
like
need to be good at one thing.
they're very binary. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's like you have less to worry about. You only have a
Hmm.
few specific things to worry about. For
You
Yumi,
got
you don't have to worry about moving around or on someone else. You just have to really worry about placing your Q and ultimate. And then like Tom Kent, you just need to place your ultimate.
exactly, yeah, and spit them out in the right spot. Who was it where? a Tom Kench spit out Senna like over the wall into the enemy team by accident. He had to flash right out. I forget who it was, but that
I
was a
didn't see
funny
that. I
moment.
saw one play with River where the Dignitas like hit the blast plant and sent him over into the enemy too. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man.
But yes, I mean Sven got solo killed multiple times in the duo lane with Berserker against the FlyQuest bot lane, which like it's kind of a yikes. And Fudge hasn't been super impressive to me. I mean, he's good. I don't know if he's on the par with like Impact, Bwippo. I think he's like in kind of a B tier with like Someday, Dokla. Um,
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, Jensen, he has had some good Azir plays. I don't know.
That game against FlyQuest made me want to rip my hair out because they drafted. To me, it was like kind of an open and shut case as long as C9 didn't mess up because they drafted like really good scaling against the opposite, like really early game, but not even like that strong early game. So they had Fiora, Yasuo, Zeri, and Lulu, which is just like really gross late game.
Mhm.
And they were against Jace, Lee Sin, Ari, and Braum. And it's like, as long as you don't fight randomly for no reason and die like a million times early, you should outscale and have it. And they just like, I don't know, teams that pick late game and then fight early are the bane of my existence, and it happens a lot in LCS. So that made me question, like, really, no one on your team is able to like take a step back in the middle of the game and be like, guys, we're outscaling. I don't know. Maybe it
Mhm.
was more complicated than that, and I'm just a noob. But yeah,
Yeah. I think circling back to Team Liquid because you mentioned C9 was going to be on top of the league. I mean, they're another team that's on top of the league. I think Team Liquid's suffering a little bit from perfectionism, especially when you have like multiple veterans on the roster that are kind of like play perfect, pick your moments at certain times in the game. Like Santorin's a very like Smithy esque pathing correctly, not going for like these 50-50 2v2s and getting a kill. It's picking that right time to level 2 gank or level 4 gank when then they're not going to expect it to clear like 3 seconds faster to get your advantages that way. Bjergsen's the same type of way. It's like always going for like the really perfectionist plays. And then Han Sama's supposed to be that great team fighter for when you're in those team fights that you set up, you selected, you chose. He's really good.
when you're in the
And I
mix,
mean,
yeah.
Core JJ is another guy that's really good at warding. I think they're suffering from too much perfectionism. I mean, Bwippo is a good wild card, but I still feel like they just need a, for like an straight week, have no scrims whatsoever and just spend like 10 hours a day, 5-man queuing in ARAMs and just doing that for an entire week, just shaking up their playstyle for 1 week and then going back into the next week and then restart their perfectionist playstyle. I think they really need to like jolt themselves with electricity to like shake things up. And they need to do it a drastic way. They need to just not be like, because it's not their bread and butter. They're not used to picking these chaotic fights, but they need to be more accustomed to them because when I see them in these situations, they're missing some basic skill shots. They need to like practice these situations more, I feel like.
Just as like a thought experiment, if you were to like slot one member out to try to fix it, who do you think is would sort of make the most difference?
I'd have to pick like Bjergsen or Core JJ to be honest. I mean, I feel
Interesting.
like they're the two lowest performing members on the team right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle. I was thinking Santorin. Maybe you get a more proactive early jungler and you make stuff happen around the map a little bit more.
I mean,
But
he is proactive, I feel like.
yeah. Well, like you said, he's sort of an ex Smithy type where he sort of controls the map. I don't know if maybe you want like if you put Blabber on the team and Blabber maybe pops off and carries the
Mm.
game from the jungle. That's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah, Blabber might actually kind of be what they need. Like they need someone who's like they need to all be a little more inty and they need to
Yeah,
embrace it. Like someone that's going to make great plays 90% of the time, but like someone that's going to make these 10% plays where like 2% of the time they're freaking out of this world great and 8% of the time they're getting flamed all over Reddit. They have none of those plays. And you need some of those plays or else you become too predictable as a team. You know, I mean, it usually doesn't work out, but you need to like throw in. It's kind of like poker where you need to throw in some bluffs if you're like if you're only going for the best fights, then I mean teams know you're going for the best fights, right?
Yeah. Um.
You're only raising when you have like a straight flop off the river and not like or a straight flush off the flop. But
I have no idea what that means. A straight flush off the flop.
it's like the best hand in poker.
No, I
So it's
gotcha.
like
I
you're
gotcha.
folding everything and then you're only betting when you have that,
Oh,
you
when you
know?
have like the nuts. Yeah, I
And
see
then
what you mean.
everyone else knows you have the nuts. And then like I mean, and then occasionally Bwipo's going all in with some terrible hand, but
Yeah.
it's not enough.
Yeah, dude. Oh my god, I'm so tired of seeing Wukong Viego every game. Like I know there are other junglers out there that can be played. We saw Blabber pick Gragas. It's a little better. We saw the
Zach?
Zac,
Yeah.
which was pretty nice. But like still every single team is just like, yes, we'll handshake Viego Wukong. And I was listening to Face Check the other day with Dom. I will dominate on it, and he was saying how he's talked to like junglers in the scene, and they're basically like, yeah, we'd love to pick some of this more specialized stuff like Kindred, where you can actually play around the jungler and they can be a carry. But
Wait,
like
I feel like I need to disagree. We've seen Kane this weekend. We've been seeing Lee Sin. I
this
mean, I feel like
weekend,
we're
yeah,
getting some spice.
this
Go on,
weekend was
though.
better. I'll admit
Okay.
it's trending in the right direction. But before this, it was like Wukong Viego every game, and we still saw a good amount of it this weekend. But the point he was making was that like LCS laners are not good enough to be able to adapt their own playstyle to like playing around the jungle. They just like don't really understand it. And so they need like these jack of all trade junglers who can sort of help them a little bit when they need it, team fight pretty well. And I thought that was an
Hmm.
interesting angle as to why we might not be seeing like Kindred, who seems really strong in solo queue at least after the durability patch.
Mm. I mean, especially with a player like Bjergsen, who feels like he's really limited in champ pool, and he's not willing to like ever pull out spice like Fizz or like I don't know something unique or like he played a LeBlanc, it looked underwhelming. But players like Jojo Pion, for example, much more likely to pull out maybe one of those unique picks. Same with Palafox. That kind of unlocks your jungler when you're willing to try all these different styles. You kind of get more accustomed to like different champions. You're not set in the same stone. I mean, that is an interesting point
Yeah, I
that you made.
like thinking of like Kindred still. I can't envision Bjergsen ever moving for like a Kindred stack or like a Kindred mark. But like you said, Jojo Pune, I can see him doing like a cheeky roam into the jungle on LeBlanc or something, making some action happen around that jungle, and yeah.
I mean, Inspired also has that fiddlesticks in his back pocket that he
Oh
has yet to
yeah,
pull out, but that would be a pretty awesome pick.
Fiddle just got buffs this patch or last patch, I think. So maybe yeah.
Mm.
Who knows?
I love fiddlesticks. It's really cool. His passive is effigy. Those scarecrows you can put into
Yeah,
bushes.
yeah,
So he can't buy normal wards or red wards, and his effigies after level 6 turn into pink wards. So then they start revealing wards too, which I think
yeah.
not everyone knows about.
It's always nice not having to like worry about your trinket because like you said, you can only get the both best of both worlds.
That's just the type of champion that you need a lot of protection coming from the jungle, because if you're against like a Lee Sin or like a Kane that we saw got brought out, like you can really get exposed early game with some the correct plays, because he thrives a lot off of just farming until 6 and then just repeat ganking 6, and he needs to like kind of cradle like two camps at once with his W, so he's kind of farming both at once. It speeds it up a lot. So if you're getting like poked and prodded and kind of just teased with, like it throws off his
Yeah,
playstyle a
I've
lot.
definitely trolled that double camp thing many a time in solo queue. But yeah, I wasn't thinking of Fiddlesticks, but yeah, that's another one of those champions that you can sort of play around the jungle role, but it requires your solo laners, like you said, to understand sort of the jungle matchup, uh, when they can invade your jungle, and yeah, I don't know. Apparently, some people think they're just LCS players just aren't good enough to do that.
I mean, I do feel like we're getting a pretty solid amount of diversity outside of the mid lane. The mid lane still seems to be like an Azir Corky snooze fest, so to speak. But like we're getting, I don't know. I feel like we're getting some diversity, especially like in the top lane. But I'm a little worried for Worlds because when there's really big champion pools and players can play a lot of different champions. I mean, I'm glad we're seeing some Swain. I mean, Whippo's pulling out some nice stuff, but we haven't seen much Kale yet, and it's a little worrying that like these Chinese players that are playing League for like 16 waking hours of the day with these massive champion pools in a buff that a lot of champions are viable. We're getting a lot of repetition because I'm pretty sure that's not happening anywhere else in the world. And I mean, if Core JJ is missing like every single Bard queue in the NA, it's not going to
Yeah,
get better at Worlds.
dude. Honestly, I'm really down on NA right now. Like if they went to an international competition right now, I don't really see. Like I guess EG could, but I don't see anyone else winning like a single game in international competition against the other region's top tier teams, which is kind of hard to see.
That's kind of
Uh,
why I hope we send someone like a CLG, like just because they're like a spicy team that's not going to go down just like dying slowly. They're going to take these random fights, and it's either going to work out and they're win, or more than likely they're going to lose after 5 minutes. But they have a chance, when you go for these aggressive fights when you're not super passive, more
yeah,
volatile.
I see what you mean. A bit of a wild card, throw a monkey wrench into
Yeah,
the
you
works.
take you know that 10% play I was talking about, where you
Yeah,
like 10% of the time they do it 100% of the time. 20% of the time it's really good or like against the foreign competition. 80% of the time they're going to feed their asses off.
oh man,
I like those
dude, I don't.
odds.
Yeah, I don't know. Just watching LCS, I feel like half of the games you already know the outcome before even watching them. Like if you see EG, 100 Thieves, Team Liquid, Cloud9 versus like any one of those four bottom teams, there's like a 75% chance they're just gonna win. The rest of the games are like against teams that are bad, and it's like really hard to watch. Like any game Immortals is in,
Yeah.
uh, and it ends up with like maybe like two or three interesting games per weekend. And very rarely am I thinking like, damn, that's a great League of Legends game of League of Legends that's being played. What like great skill I'm seeing. I'm thinking a lot more like, dude, what are you? That was troll as hell. So
It is
I
a
don't
bit
know.
it is a bit worrying that like two of our top teams in 100 Thieves and Team Liquid had 0 kills all the way up until 22 minutes. Like
Oh
they're
yeah,
suffering from some type of fear or like perfectionist issue. I
it's
mean, I
because
just feel like that shouldn't be
yeah,
happening.
there's no way that in 25 minutes, if you're a good team, there isn't like an opportunity you can take advantage of, or like a dive you can do. Um, so yeah, just exactly what you said. It's just if you're a good
Yeah.
team, there's no way there should be no kills for
It's
25
like
minutes.
I mean, like there's instances where like it's really cool. They're fighting over wards in these different areas, and it's this really creative game. That's not what's happening. It's not these 5D mind games where everyone's fighting for the perfect vision and they're knowing when to not go into the wrong vision. It's just everyone's being super passive and just like farming, just stacking drags, waiting for their like second items.
Right.
I just feel like if I was a coach, I'd love to be like a League of Legends coach and experiment with like different like
Like LS.
ideas and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, Sven
like LS.
was on Monty and Thorne's show, Summoning Insight today, and he was saying like he wasn't on the team, but he was kind of watching what LS was doing from the sidelines, and he was like, it was actually really refreshing to see a coach that was like talking about how biscuits are like a bad rune, or like if you die, if even one person dies fighting for a Rift Herald, it's like usually not worth it, just because optimally with Rift Herald you're getting like 3 plates, which is a kill and assist basically. And he was saying it was really refreshing to hear Ellis say that. And I was sitting there thinking, like, what, other coaches aren't saying that kind of thing? What are they doing? Like, why are you paying them? I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
Obviously, I wouldn't do any better, but
why are you paying them and like how much are you paying them? I'm curious because Dokla was mentioning how like in the past his coaches he's learning a lot. He'd be able to coach a player in top a lot better than coaches from his past because a lot of coaches just talk about like wave management, basic things like that, teaching things like this. He said like he would be able to coach on a micro level and small like interactions and windows between like champ specific matchups. it's not that hard to learn wave management. I feel like at a top level when you're eating and breathing League of Legends, you can
Mhm.
look up like a YouTube tutorial from 5 different creators. You're probably going to be able to do it as a coach or as a player. But some of these nuances, I think that's also one of the issues with North America in comparison to like these Eastern and these Asian teams. I feel like those coaches are playing the game a lot. They're thinking, they're trying just as hard as these players. I mean, when you're a coach in North America, I feel like you're cruising by almost. It's not like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I've heard also that players are like hesitant to listen to coaches just because like when you look at the paychecks, it like kind of tells the story of who's really in charge. Like if the coach was so important, why is the player earning, however many times more? The coach is like much more replaceable than the player, so it kind of makes it hard. Versus in like the East, you have much more of like that age hierarchy where like you
Mm-hmm.
kind of have to listen to the coach because they're older than you, and that's how their culture works. So maybe it's some of that going on, but yeah,
That's
something's
one of
not
the
right.
reasons why I love the concept of Bjergsen as coach because he had all that experience, and he was going in. He could like really like play 1-on-ones against Power of Evil, help him that way.
Oh man, power
But
of
like you're
evil.
saying, yeah, I know. I mean, that's pretty sad. I don't know what's wrong with that team.
it's it's actually hard to watch. I wrote a few things about their games. I wrote they look so bad. They commit 4 to Herald, see Golden Guardians coming, and run as fast as they can. Meanwhile, Revenge is TPing in on Gnar, and oh, dude, like Ignar is getting one shot as they retreat. And why are you spending all these resources if you're just gonna run at the first sign of Golden Guardians? It just it just doesn't make sense. And then Immortals goes for like a random dragon. Meanwhile, Golden Guardians drops Herald Men, kills mid tier 1, tier 2, and the inhib tower, all while they're killing dragon. It's like, oh, what am I watching? They're just getting
Yeah.
routed over and over. Oh my god.
I really feel for Power of Evil. He needs to go back to Europe before it's too late.
Yeah, he needs something, that's for sure.
Huni also, he had some suspicious Nar plays, Nar TPs.
Oh
Then he
yeah,
had
when he
some like hero 1v1 attempts where I was like, I could have done that. I'm mechanical enough to have done that.
dude, when he TP'd in at like 1/3 HP with like 1 millimeter of his Gnar rage,
Yeah.
and he just gets turned on in one shot. Dude. At least some of these games are good for some laughs, because I don't know how I'd get through them otherwise.
Because I saw that everyone saw the TP and he was in Meganar, and then like and you could just tell the casters, the players, everyone just got real confused because he was third HP. And it was
Oh god, yeah, I don't know, man. Like I said, as far as competitiveness goes, a lot of these games are not quite there.
like I wonder if
Um,
Rooney was just like watching like the fight the whole time and then like waiting for the perfect moment to TP and he clicked it, not realizing anything.
did he? Had he just like solo dragon or something? Why was he? Why was he so low?
I don't
I,
know. I thought he was bot lane farming, so I looked at
yeah,
the
yeah.
mini map to see if someone chunked him out, and no one was down there. He was all by himself.
Oh god, yeah.
Maybe he would like walked in. Maybe he just like clicked forward and was waiting to like TP at the right moment and walked into the tower or
Into the
something.
tower, took like 3
Imagine.
shots. I'm gonna go back and watch after this. Actually, I gotta figure this out. I gotta get to the bottom of this.
That's all for me though.
Yeah. Next week, like I said, EG Team Liquid I think is the best match. Next week is really hellish, man, in terms of matches. Like the matchups. 100 Thieves plays FlyQuest. Okay, that's okay actually. FlyQuest has been doing pretty good, so that one's a little interesting. But like Dig is playing EG, Immortals and CLG are playing, TSM versus Cloud9, Liquid versus Golden Guardians. It's like, oh my
I'm
god,
kind of
dude.
excited for that Dig versus EG game because they almost
Really?
did have a 2-0 weekend against TSM and GG, which are bottom middle of the pack. I mean
Mm-hmm.
TSM and Fly, which are bottom middle of the pack teams. So if they don't get stomped and if they can even win, um, Dignitas is definitely a dark horse for the back of this like the playoff runs because historically, I mean, with Dardoch, I mean, on their roster, they've been making a few different runs at playoffs, and they've had fast starts to the split. This kind of a different iteration, but
Mm-hmm.
usually they're in the back of the playoffs. Right now it's CLG, but usually Dignitas is the team that surprises everyone.
Good. Do you have Dignitas's record off the top of your head?
2-5.
Oh God. Oh Lord. Okay.
But it could have
Well,
just been
yeah.
a slow start because, like, if they started 1-4 and then got 2 wins this past weekend, they're 3-4,
Right.
and then
Right.
that's a really big game to watch for them, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's only like a handful of good games next weekend. So, dude, who knows what we're gonna talk about next week because it's a little bleak, but I'm sure we'll come up with something.
Yeah. All right. This has been episode 22 of Double Buffs.